From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Tuesday, July the 20th, 2021. 2 rockets were fired at northern Israel from Lebanon early this morning. The IDF said one was intercepted by the Iron Dome and the second rocket fell in an open area inside Israel. There were no reports of damage or injury. IDF artillery fired at the source of the rocket fire in Lebanon in response. Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz said Lebanon was ultimately responsible for the attack since it allows terrorists to operate within its territory. And he stressed that Israel will not allow the social, political, and economic crisis in Lebanon to turn into a security threat to Israel. The Times of Israel said the IDF believed that the rockets were likely fired by a Palestinian group in southern Lebanon, not by Lebanon's main terror group Hezbollah, but that group would have to have had Hezbollah's approval. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett spoke today with the head of Unilever, the large conglomerate that owns Ben & Jerry's, about the ice cream giant's announcement yesterday that it would no longer sell its product in the quote-unquote occupied Palestinian territory, apparently referring to Jewish settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem when its license expires at the end of next year. Bennett told CEO Alan Jope that this boycott was a clearly anti-Israeli step and that Israel will act vigorously against any act of boycott directed against its citizens. And both Foreign Minister Yair Lapid and Israel's ambassador to the United States and to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, said that they would reach out to the over 30 states in the U.S. with anti-BDS legislation to ask them to enforce these laws against Ben & Jerry's. And more response from Jewish organizations here in the U.S. about the announcement yesterday. The Anti-Defamation League tweeted, "We are disappointed by this decision from Ben & Jerry's. You can disagree with policies without feeding into dangerous campaigns that seek to undermine Israel." And the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations wrote in a statement that this decision pushed by BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions activists, who are now stating that Ben & Jerry's did not go far enough by not boycotting all of Israel, demonstrates that some who push these boycotts are not guided by concern over disputed territory, but rather seek any excuse to demonize the state of Israel. Adding, "We encourage Unilever to recognize that boycotts of Israel are discriminatory and further inflame the Israeli-Palestinian conflict," saying that since Ben & Jerry's admirably speaks out against discrimination and hatred, we are dismayed that it would ally itself with the discriminatory and anti-Semitic BDS movement. We strongly urge them to rescind this decision. An egalitarian prayer service held by the conservative movement in Israel in Jerusalem's Old City for Tisha B'Av was disrupted by a group of far-right ultra-Orthodox Jewish extremists Saturday night. The prayers were taking place in the area designated for pluralistic prayer, separate from but near the Kotel, the Western Wall Plaza, when the extremist group of mostly teenagers entered the area, cursing and screaming at those present, and began installing a mechitza, a divider between men and women. Conservative leaders asked them to stop, but those calls were ignored. Israeli leaders and Jewish organizations condemned the incident, noting that Tisha B'Av mourns the destruction of the first and second temples, which Jewish tradition teaches were destroyed due to sinat chinam, senseless hatred between Jews, among other reasons. Foreign Minister Yair Lapid said of the disruption, "That's the baseless hatred that led to the destruction of the temple and our exile. The Kotel," he said, "belongs to every stream of Judaism, and it will be a place where every Jew feels at home." The Conference of Presidents said internal division has been the downfall of our people many times over the millennia. When we show disunity and baseless hatred, it weakens us as a people and encourages our opponents. The Kotel is our collective holy space. Over 100,000 Muslim worshippers, including those who came from the West Bank, prayed at Jerusalem's Temple Mount al-Aqsa Mosque compound this morning, marking the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha, the festival of the sacrifice. The mass gathering was held without incident, and Israel's official Twitter account shared images noting that Israel guarantees freedom of religion and will continue to safeguard the right to worship freely. Israel's leaders extended their best wishes to the Muslims, Druze, and Circassians celebrating the holiday in the country and beyond, including Prime Minister Bennett and Israel's President Isaac Herzog, who said to those celebrating, "We are destined to live together in partnership and brotherhood, and I hope that this Eid will bring with it the omens of peace." Herzog also extended his wishes to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas over the phone, as did Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz, in the first conversation between a high-ranking Israeli minister and the Palestinian Authority leader in 4 years. Gantz's office said the two spoke with a positive atmosphere and discussed the need to advance confidence-building measures between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, which they said will assist the security and economy of the entire region. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Tuesday, July the 20th at 7 o'clock. Author Jonathan Kirsch talks about how the Spanish Inquisition laid the groundwork for Jewish persecution. At 7:30, celebrate Ladino music and culture and hear from speakers about growing up with the Judeo-Spanish language as the American Sephardi Federation celebrates the 4th Annual Ladino Day. At 9, part 2 of Mark Golub's interview with Rabbi Elie Abadie on the Chaim. At 10, Jews forced out of their homes in Arab lands offer personal accounts during an evening commemorating their exodus. And coming up next, it's ILTV's Insider. And that's the JBS News Update for Tuesday, July the 20th, 2021. I'm Teisha Bader. Stay healthy, stay well.